And then, of course, tomorrow, it's finally here. The wait is over. College football, noon Eastern, Florida State, Georgia Tech, live from Dublin, Ireland. So, I'm excited as a Florida State fan. That doesn't mean that I'm going to sit up here and talk about how Florida State is going to dominate this game. That's not what we're doing here. We are fair and impartial on Sports Reports as ordered in 2-5 Daily. So, let's just look at this. So, Florida State lost a lot. They're breaking in a lot. They lost their receivers, Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, replacing them with guys who just haven't produced a lot at the college level just yet, inexperienced. You're bringing in a new quarterback as well, DJ Uyangale, who is not necessarily Peyton Manning reincarnated. So there's some questions here. They went and got Roydell Williams at running back. We still got Lawrence in the backfield as well. So as I look at this, what is Florida State? I think Florida State's going to have to lean on their defense, especially in this game. Why do I say that? Because Haynes King, the quarterback for Georgia Tech, he threw 27 touchdowns last year. He was a revelation for them, turned their fortunes around, made them a team that nobody wanted to play. He also threw 16 interceptions. And if you pull the curtain back just a little bit, you look at him against their best opponents last year, right? So against Georgia, he went 11 for 20, 158 yards, no touchdown, no picks. Against Clemson, 13 of 31, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Against Louisville, 19 of 32, 313, 3 touchdowns and a pick. And then Miami, he went 12 of 25 for 151 yards with a touchdown and 2 picks. So I say that to say, if you can get pressure, if you can get home, Haynes King will give you the ball. They do bring back Jamal Haynes out of the backfield. So, you have something to worry about there. But this game is going to come down to, can Florida State's offensive line wear Georgia Tech down? Can Georgia Tech keep their offense on the field long enough to not get their defense worn down? Because Georgia Tech, their offensive line is a strength of their team. The problem is I think Florida State's defensive line is going to eat them up, right? And even if they can do that, those corners out there for Florida State are going to shut down the field, even though Georgia Tech does have decent receivers. Now, when Georgia Tech's on defense, they brought in Tyler, I hate these names, Santucci, from Duke. He brought him in, and why I bring that up in particular to point out who he is because last year, if you go back to week 1, Monday night, Labor Day, Duke hosting Clemson, you remember Cade Klubnik and the gang turning the ball over a lot. You remember Duke being aggressive, in their face, knocking the ball away, stripping the ball, blocking punts. He was the defensive coordinator of that. So this is not something that he's going to be afraid of. He's not going to look across the field. And by the way, at Duke, he coached against Florida State last year. Remember, Florida State had to make the big comeback after Riley Leonard got hurt. Riley Leonard doesn't get hurt. That defense probably smothers them, and Duke actually wins that game. So that's why I say I'm not picking Florida State to just run all over Georgia Tech. But the problem with Georgia Tech's defense is they were 120th out of 130 teams last year in total defense. So there might be some wiggle room for Florida State to get off here. So, the over-under, I've seen it at 55.5. I've seen Florida State favored by 12. What do you think? So I think we're going to see a slugfest early. DJ Uyangale trying to get comfortable. Like I said, he's not necessarily the thrower. So I think that he's going to get off to a slow start, rocky start. And they're going to have to rely on his legs a little bit in the second half to break Georgia Tech open so that they can take advantage of play action. Now, with that being said, don't be surprised if you look up at halftime and say the score is 10-3. Say 13-6. And Nole Nation is going to be panicking. I'm not going to panic. Nole Nation is going to panic. Everybody's going to say, see, Florida State is overrated. But don't forget, Florida State also has that chip on their shoulder of being left out the playoff last year. So this game has a wide range of how it could play out. I think it always plays out to Florida State winning. Now, when you talk about the 12 and a half, that's where I get a little bit nervous because I think Florida State's going to be running the football, especially with the running clock rule now, where before, last year the games were a lot quicker because teams were just pounding the ball. So if Florida State can do that, that'll keep the scoring down. So at the end of the day, I'm going to take Florida State 27-23 in Ireland. And then Florida State's going to start the ACC season 1-0. They have 3 straight after that. And then they get to sit back from the bird eye view and watch the rest of the ACC take on each other.